He handed me a black USB and said, "Done." That's what Eddie Garcia, a hotel security guard, testified under oath. His voice steady, the courtroom silent. The USB? It held the only known copy of a video showing Sean "Diddy" Combs physically assaulting his former girlfriend Cassie Ventura, and the price to make it disappear? $100,000 in a brown paper bag. What happened in that hotel room in 2016 sparked a chain reaction that would unravel an empire. Now, with former assistants, security guards, financial officers, and even Cassie herself taking the stand, the truth behind the brand is coming to light. But this isn't just about one man's downfall. It's about the machinery behind a mogul, and whether it was used to protect a business or cover up a criminal enterprise. Because what came out in court isn't just shocking, it's the kind of truth that ruins legends. It started like any other shift. Eddie Garcia was just a 24-year-old security guard working the Intercontinental Hotel desk in Century City. Nothing unusual. Then came the call. There'd been a domestic dispute in one of the suites. Garcia checked the cameras. At first he didn't recognize the people on screen, but what he saw, that stuck with him. A man, tall, commanding, furious, grabbing a woman by the neck, shoving her, throwing her to the ground, dragging her limp body down the hallway, kicking her while she was motionless. And eventually, recognition set in. The man was Sean "Diddy" Combs. The woman, Cassie Ventura. No police were called, no medical help. Garcia later said Cassie never asked for either. Just silence. But the footage stayed, tucked away on the hotel's security servers. Then hours later, someone called. Christina Coram, Combs' chief of staff. She wanted to know, was there footage? Could she see it? Garcia said no. If she wanted it, she'd need to go through hotel management or come back with a subpoena, but she wasn't done. Not long after, a woman showed up in the hotel lobby asking for Garcia. It was Coram again, this time in person. Same question, same answer. But Garcia offered her a quiet warning. "Off the record," he told her. "It's bad." That should have been the end of it. But later that night, Garcia's personal phone rang, a number he didn't recognize. No one at the hotel had it. Not Coram. Not Combs. He picked up. The voice on the other end was rushed, nervous, almost panicked. It was Diddy, himself. He said he didn't remember everything, that he'd had too much to drink, that things got out of hand. He kept saying it could ruin him. Then came the offer. He said he'd take care of Garcia, that he sounded like someone who wanted to help. Garcia didn't agree to anything that night, but the door was open, and that's when the wheels started turning. The next day, Garcia made a call to his supervisor, Bill Medrano. He told him what was happening, that Diddy wanted the hotel surveillance video, that he was willing to pay. There was a pause. Then Medrano answered plainly, "I'll do it for $50,000. That's what it would take," Garcia called back. This time, Christina Coram answered. She passed the phone to Combs. Garcia gave him the number. And Combs? He didn't hesitate. "Eddie, my angel," he said. "I knew you could do it." The plan was set. That same day, Medrano walked into the hotel's server room, pulled the footage from the system, and copied it onto a black USB drive. He handed it off to Garcia. The next stop? A private high-rise apartment in Los Angeles. Combs had given him the address. Garcia arrived nervous, uneasy, trying to stay calm. He was buzzed upstairs and led into a quiet room by one of Diddy's private security guards. When Diddy walked in, he was smiling, confident, relaxed. "Eddie, my angel," he said again, arms open, as if this was some reunion. But this wasn't friendly. This was business. And Diddy was ready to close the deal before anything else. Garcia was handed documents, Several sheets of paper neatly printed on Combs' company letterhead. A non-disclosure agreement. An NDA. It wasn't just about staying quiet. It required Garcia to declare that what he was handing over was the only existing copy of the video. And if he breached the agreement, if he said anything, showed anyone, the penalty would be a $1 million fine. Garcia didn't read the whole thing. He said his hands were shaking, his voice cracking. He just wanted to be done with it. He signed. Then Combs left the room. Moments later, he returned, this time carrying a brown paper bag and a money counter. And just like that, the counting began. 10,000, 20, 30. Each stack fed into the machine. By the end of it, $100,000 in cash, not 50. Not what was agreed. Double that. When Combs was finished, he looked at Garcia and asked, "You want to count it yourself?" Garcia shook his head. "I trust the machine." And that was it. The video was exchanged. The contract signed. The room cleared. No cameras, no paper trail, just one USB, and a whole lot of silence. Before Garcia could even leave the apartment, there was one more twist. Diddy had someone on the phone. He turned the screen toward Garcia. FaceTime. The woman on the other end had her hoodie up, low lighting behind her, face half shadowed. But Garcia recognized her voice. It was Cassie Ventura. Combs handed Garcia the phone and prompted her, softly but clearly, "Let him know that you want this to go away too." Cassie, calm and composed, told Garcia she had a movie coming out, and now wasn't a good time for this to surface. "I just want it to go away," she said. It was short, polite, but pointed. With the call done and the cash in hand, Garcia stood up to leave. Diddy followed him to the lobby. There, they requested both of their cars at the valet. Combs was still chatting casually. Then he leaned in and asked a question that made Garcia's stomach drop. "So, how do you plan to spend the money?" Garcia gave a vague answer. Diddy nodded, then warned him, "Don't make any big purchases." Back in his car, Garcia immediately called his boss, Bill Medrano. He told him it was done. Later, Garcia split the money, $50,000 to Medrano, $20,000 to another officer who had been on duty that night. Garcia kept the remaining $30,000. He used it to buy a used car. In cash. Quiet, no banks, no deposits, no taxes, but even that wasn't the end of it. A week or two later, Garcia went to check the hotel's security system. The incident report? Gone. The footage file? Deleted. Everything wiped. He didn't tell anyone. Why? Because, as he said in court, reporting it would only draw more attention to the situation. Years passed. Then, in 2024, that video, the one he was paid to make disappear, surfaced again in the media. Garcia panicked. He reached out to two of his former co-workers. They talked briefly. Nervous conversations between men who thought this chapter was closed. Then Garcia deleted his messages. He didn't tell the truth to law enforcement at first, lied about his role, lied about the money. But later, with legal pressure mounting, he was given immunity in exchange for testimony, and under oath, he laid it all bare. Every detail, every call, every dollar. When asked why he came forward, Garcia admitted, "Once the video came back, I knew it was only a matter of time." The courtroom quieted as Derek Ferguson took the stand. He wasn't a random witness. This was Diddy's former chief financial officer, the man who had once handled his accounts, his properties, his businesses, the money man, the fixer, and prosecutors weren't wasting time. They moved straight to a bank statement. December 2011, Ferguson confirmed the document. It showed a $20,000 transfer from Sean Combs' account to Cassandra Ventura, Cassie. 9 days later, a wire transfer from her father, Roderick Ventura, for the exact same amount, $20,000. And just 4 days after that, The same amount was returned to Roderick Ventura's account. On paper, it looked clean. A loop. But prosecutors had another piece of the puzzle. Earlier in the trial, Cassie's mother, Regina Ventura, had testified. She said Diddy once demanded $20,000 in exchange for not releasing explicit footage of Cassie, and that she genuinely believed he would harm her daughter if the money wasn't paid. Now, suddenly, the bank records matched that number. And the timeline. Legal analyst Misty Maris weighed in on CNN. "This changes things," she said. "Now we're seeing the business records align with previous testimony. It's no longer just a disturbing story, it's a transaction, and it points directly to what could be considered illegal conduct." The defense team didn't take that lightly. They tried to paint the transaction as ordinary, something unrelated, maybe even coincidental, but the implication was already planted. A powerful music mogul, an explicit threat, a desperate family, and a suspicious $20,000 that moved through accounts like a quiet bribe. As Ferguson flipped through the documents, prosecutors pressed again. "You authorized these payments?" "Yes," Ferguson said. He didn't flinch. He didn't deny it. But he didn't explain them either. And in the jury's mind, that silence spoke volumes. Derek Ferguson had worked with Sean "Diddy" Combs for nearly 2 decades. From Bad Boy Records to Revolt TV, he'd seen it all, from inside the boardroom. So when he returned to the stand, all eyes were on him. Prosecutor Christy Slavic started, slowly, building credibility. Ferguson confirmed he was CFO of Bad Boy from 1998 to 2012, then served as Chief Growth Officer and eventually Chief Operating Officer of Revolt TV. He managed budgets, oversaw accounts, reviewed Combs' personal finances once a year. He even handled payroll for security guards, assistants, and personal staff, funded directly by the company. But prosecutors weren't just interested in the logistics. They were building something bigger. They wanted the jury to see the structure, to show that Diddy's companies weren't just entertainment brands, but a machine that blended personal and business worlds into one. When asked if Combs ever paid for personal expenses using company cards, Ferguson admitted, "From time to time, yes." And the way it worked? Senior staff like Combs would use their American Express corporate cards. Ferguson's finance team would then determine which entity should cover which expense. That meant dinners, flights, hotels, and personal outings could easily pass through as business. And no, Combs wasn't personally sorting through the receipts. Then came the questions about bank accounts. Ferguson confirmed he and Combs were signatories on multiple business accounts. He reviewed records showing accounts tied to Janice Combs, Music Inc., Revolt, and other entities under the Combs umbrella. He even acknowledged that some payments, like the ones to Cassie and her family, came through these channels. But the most chilling moment came when the defense flipped the script. They asked Ferguson a simple question. "Did you ever see Sean Combs commit a crime?" "No," Ferguson answered. "Did you ever witness anyone use violence on his behalf?" "Again," he said. "No." They pressed harder. "Did you see anyone try to enhance his reputation through acts of prostitution or trafficking?" A sharp objection from the prosecution. "Sustained," said the judge, but the seed was planted. Later, the defense circled back. "Did you think highly of Mr. Combs while you worked for him?" Ferguson hesitated. He paused. Then, shaking his head slightly, he said, "I don't know how to answer that." The courtroom fell silent. It wasn't a yes. It wasn't a no. It was something else entirely. A long career. A complicated relationship. And maybe, just maybe, a man who knew more than he could safely say. By the time the names Mia and Jane were spoken in court, everyone already knew this part was different. No last names, no photos, no video feed to the public. These were protected witnesses, accusers, And their stories weren't just painful, they were dangerous. First came Mia, a former assistant to Sean Combs. She testified under a pseudonym for her safety. Over 3 days, she described a cycle of control, fear, and abuse while working closely with the music mogul. She spoke of verbal threats, physical intimidation, and worse. But the courtroom wasn't just listening to her voice. The prosecution showed photos Mia had posted on social media, birthday messages for Diddy, public celebrations. The defense jumped on it. If he was so abusive, they asked, why post happy birthday tributes? That's when prosecutors revealed their next move. They told the judge they had jailhouse calls from Combs, recordings where he discussed using his birthday as a marketing opportunity, a strategy to change the narrative and pressure those around him, including Mia, to post in support of him. To the prosecution, it was more than manipulation. It was evidence of coercion, of control. Then came Jane, another accuser, another pseudonym. And before she even took the stand, the prosecution made a bold request. We want the public video screens shut off during her testimony. Judge Subramanian agreed. He didn't want any risk of Jane's identity leaking, especially not with what she was about to reveal. Her testimony, prosecutors warned, would include graphic text messages, explicit videos, and private conversations with Combs. Not just about what he did, but how he kept it quiet. The defense pushed back hard. They demanded more time to review Jane's messages with Combs. They even asked to use the courtroom after hours, alone with their client, no separation screen, no restrictions. He needs to see the texts directly, Diddy's lawyer argued. We need a desk, not a screen. The judge pushed back. Why can't you review them on screen like usual? But the defense insisted. It was a Sixth Amendment issue. They wanted full access, no barriers, no marshals in the way. Eventually, the judge gave them time, from 7 a.m. to 8:30 a.m., and again after court adjourned. Because what was coming in Jane's testimony wasn't just another story. It was the next major blow in a case already bursting at the seams. And behind closed doors, far from public view, the jury would hear it all. To the average person, it might seem like this case is about a hotel video, or a violent outburst, or hush money. But to the federal government, this is about racketeering. This is about building a case under RICO, the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. And if the prosecution is right, then Sean Diddy Combs wasn't just running music labels and TV networks. He was allegedly running a criminal enterprise, one designed to serve his power, protect his image, and silence his victims. In court, prosecutors began to lay the foundation. A criminal enterprise must exist. It must affect interstate commerce. The defendant must be associated with it, and he must commit at least 2 acts of racketeering. That's what the law requires. That's what they needed the jury to see, so they built piece by piece. They brought out financial records, transfers through multiple Combs-affiliated companies. They pointed to assistants, security, and staff paid by the business to handle not just logistics, but personal favors, private encounters, and, according to some witnesses, threats. And they focused heavily on one detail: the way Diddy allegedly used his businesses as a shield. One legal analyst put it plainly, they're trying to show that his companies weren't just about music and entertainment. They were vessels, vehicles for abuse, for intimidation, and for covering it all up. Misty Maris, a CNN legal commentator, explained the risk. This is exactly how the R. Kelly trial played out. The prosecution's theory is that Combs used the resources of his empire not just to build his career, but to hide his crimes. They referenced predicate crimes, forced labor, false imprisonment, obstruction of justice, and they tied it all back to testimony from people like Eddie Garcia, who accepted cash and an NDA to erase a damning video, and Derek Ferguson, who admitted that personal and business finances blurred constantly under Combs' leadership. But it was more than just cash or confusion. To the prosecution, this was methodical. A blueprint. Combs at the top, orchestrating it all, carefully, deliberately, and with full control. Now the question was, would the jury believe it? Would they see a music mogul or a mastermind? By week 4 of the trial, the jury had already heard from over 20 witnesses. Each one brought a new piece of the puzzle. Some came from Combs' inner circle. Others were complete outsiders who, by chance or proximity, saw more than they were ever meant to. There was Cassie Ventura, the prosecution's star witness, who took the stand for multiple days, detailing what she called years of abuse, coercion, and psychological control. Her testimony shook the courtroom. But it was only the beginning. Next came the lesser-known names, but their stories packed just as much weight. Daniel Phillip, a male review manager, testified he was paid to sleep with Cassie. Sheree Hayes, a male dancer, said he had been involved in multiple sexual encounters arranged by Combs, some consensual, some not so clear. Kid Cudi, the rapper, spoke briefly about his own connection to Cassie and the bizarre events that followed. Fire. A Porsche set ablaze in his driveway. He didn't point fingers, but prosecutors made sure the timeline was unmistakable. Then there were the agents, from Homeland Security, from LAPD, from the Arson Division, each called to testify about raids, forensic searches, and digital extractions. One by one, they painted a picture of a man surrounded by walls, financial, physical, legal, designed to protect him from consequences. And those walls, they were starting to crack. Israel Flores, another hotel security guard, testified about the night of the 2016 incident, the same night Eddie Garcia handed over the infamous tape. Flores didn't participate in the handoff. In fact, Garcia told the court that Flores was too by the book to be trusted with it. But even he became a silent witness to how things were handled behind the scenes. Then came George Kaplan, a former assistant who also testified under immunity after pleading the Fifth. There was a pattern here. Those closest to Combs, those who worked for him, traveled with him, covered for him. They weren't speaking up voluntarily, they were being compelled. And when they did speak, their testimonies echoed with a single uncomfortable truth. Everyone knew something, but for years, no one said anything, until now. As the judge dismissed the jury for the day, a strange quiet fell over the courtroom. Not the silence of rest, but the kind that comes when everyone knows they've just witnessed something heavy, something historic. The story of Sean Diddy. Combs wasn't just about one night in a hotel, or a briefcase of cash, or one woman's testimony. It had become something far bigger, a story about power, how it's built, how it's used, and how it's protected, about loyalty and fear, blurred lines between business and abuse, about the machinery behind fame, and how easily it can hide the darkest parts of a person. For years, Combs was untouchable, a mogul, a brand, a success story. But in this courtroom, none of that mattered. Here, it's just the law, and testimony, and evidence, and no matter how many assistants, lawyers, or executives step forward to defend him. The truth is now in the hands of 12 jurors. 12 strangers who have to decide, is this a misunderstood empire or a criminal one? And if it's the latter, how many people had to stay quiet to keep it running? One thing's for sure, this isn't over, not even close. Because there are more witnesses, more tapes, more secrets waiting to be dragged into the light, and the fall of a man like Sean Combs. If it comes, it won't be fast, it'll be piece by piece, just like this trial.